Welcome to today's special 49 News. I'm Ayana Gill. On today's show, we'll be discussing the effects of the media on our American society, more particularly the effects of news. Throughout the history of our society's stages with technological advances and developments of movies, radio, television, newspapers, and much more, our society has had a great reliance on forms of media that greatly shape and impact us. Today, we are constantly flooded with images and messages from the media that have many raised the question of whether the media shapes us as a society or if society shapes the media. Broadcast news redefined medium, as television was quicker to access and easier to get information or entertainment, explaining why most Americans chose to turn on the television or access news through the internet. But in today's society, with many different mediums to access news, the most popular isn't credible broadcast news stations, but news that takes on a more comical aspect. News is information people need to function in our society. It's information about events, occurrences, tragedies, and issues within our community and globally. The controversy surrounding the news is that with the development of mediums to which the news is distributed, it's being blurred with entertainment. News shows have taken their own spin on the news through satire, and its popularity has grown immensely amongst younger viewers. But what are the effects of fake news over real news in our society?
News, defined as the presentation of information that is timely, important, and interesting to audience of current events, politics, sports, law, business, and entertainment. Every facet of American and global societies are captured through the news. In our society today, Americans rely primarily on television and other mobile devices for the consumption of news. As statistics show that more than half of the population gets most of its news from television, a quarter gets most of its news from newspaper and other print media, while the rest of the population is divided between radio and online sources. According to an annual report on American journalism by the Pew Research Center's Project for Excellence in Journalism, the audience for the three primary network news divisions grew greatly. Evening news is dominated by a significant total viewership as seen in 2011, a good year for network news programs. An average 22.5 million people watched one of the three commercial broadcast news programs on ABC, CBS, or NBC. That is an increase of 972,000 viewers, or 4.5%, over the average viewership the year before, according to data from the Nielsen Media Research. 60% of television news viewers say they trust television news more than any other news outlets when encountering conflicting versions of a story. But the controversies surrounding television broadcasting news is that what is considered newsworthy is very altered, especially in our American culture. Many critics argue against the fact that news supposedly constitutes important, recent, and life-affecting information that the public should be aware of. And this is where satirical news hosts like Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert take over with fake news and breaking humor on all things newsworthy. The most popular and widely successful satirical news outlets are The Daily Show and The Colbert Report. The Daily Show is considered sketch comedy news, interviews, and features that are mostly politics in general, which poke fun at mainstream news organizations while revealing interesting insights into the human condition. The Colbert Report, a spin-off and counterpart of The Daily Show, turns politics into comedy and jokes about the media in a similar way. The show satirizes conservative, personality-driven political pundit programs, particularly Fox News' The O'Reilly Factor. Many young viewers report getting their news from satirical comedy sources and never any of the network broadcasting news programs. Satirical news has had a profound effect on the way Americans consume news. The Daily Show is well known as an outspoken critique of strong conservative networks like Fox News, as well as strong liberal networks such as CNN and MSNBC.
Of course, folks, pretty soon our sandwiches are going to be metric because America is finished. Yesterday, Obama shredded the Constitution and then anointed himself King Gunsnatcher the Magnificent. Jim,
we will make easier to keep guns out of the hands of criminals by strengthening the background check system. We will help schools hire more resource officers. Congress should restore a ban on military-style assault weapons and a 10-round limit for magazines. A majority of Americans agree with us on this. And by the way, so did Ronald Reagan.
Oh, take a cheap shot at Ronald Reagan. What are you trying to do, impress Jodie Foster?
Stewart and Colbert are known for turning political situations into comical gold, delivering the news on a platform that critiques other news shows for their outright misleading of facts, judgment, and blatant political bias. Satirical news has forged the path for Americans to question the sources of broadcast news programs, highlighting their inability to deliver news with value. Satirical news shows are classified as soft news compared with traditional hard news. These programs feature lower levels of public affairs information and focus more on drama, sensationalism, human interest themes, and personalities.
So I missed the whole press conference. What happened?
Lock and load. Obama lays out his gun control plan.
The unprecedented assault on your Second Amendment rights.
The Second Amendment is meant as a final firewall against tyranny.
He is not king and he is not czar.
Going after our guns.
Chipping away at our freedoms.
Barack Obama came in peace to rip our Constitution to pieces.
What did he do? Let's look at the president's opening statement.
Kneel before Saul.
Oh, that is bad. That is bad.
United we stand off. President Obama and his anti-gun stormtroopers say it's okay for me to have a pistol. It's okay for me to have a rifle. It's okay for me to have a shotgun. But it's not okay for me to have military-style weaponry? Maybe they've forgotten what the Second Amendment is all about.
The founders feared government tyranny and allowed the people to arm themselves against it.
The basis for the Second Amendment is not really about self-defense. It is about resistance to government tyranny.
Our founders, our framers, they never mentioned hunting. They never mentioned deer. They never mentioned any of these things. They talked about freedom and liberty over tyranny.
Damn straight. Like anybody setting up a new government, the founders added a clause that said, if you don't like what we're doing, feel free to shoot us.
By showing clips of daily reports in a montage format, the show highlights the variety of political biases within main broadcast news outlets, displaying the liberal and conservative dominance within the news. The general rhetorical appeal of satirical news shows is their ability to entertain, but also question and reevaluate the news for its one-sided flaws. An online poll conducted by Time magazine credited Jon Stewart as America's most trusted newscaster among his devoted 2 million nightly viewers. The effects of satirical news on the American perspective are seen in reports which show that viewers of satirical news exhibit more cynicism towards the electoral system and the news media at large. Amongst the predominantly younger viewers of The Daily Show reported increased confidence in their ability to understand the complicated world of politics.
You guys on the gun lobby still want to tell me the answer is more guns. Look, it's madness.
Oh, calm down, Piers.
Through parodies, satirical segments, and appearances by political figures are the subject of next-day conversations covered as news stories by journalists, the most viewed content online, an essential part of campaign strategy. As soft news programming has become more prevalent, scholars have begun to examine how it influences the public. Many have argued that soft news threatens the integrity of the democratic process by overemphasizing trivial events, downplaying significant public affairs issues, and oversimplifying the complex reality of these issues.
Obama knew his gun grab was going to pass the smell test, so he stooped to surrounding himself with children, like this confused boy Joey. He loves trains. Folks, it was a transparent appeal to our humanity. Luckily, Rush Limbaugh doesn't have any.
Obama uses kids as human shields. He brings these kids, supposedly who wrote letters to the White House after Newtown, bring them up there to present a picture of support among the children. You got these little kids there, they don't want to die. And how can you not listen to them?
You are being manipulated, America. Oh, boo-hoo, I want a pony. I want to go to Disneyland. I want to wait to see another day. Boo-hoo. Grow up.
Especially when the right's been trying so hard to maintain a rational and logical dialogue about guns. Remember?
If he does executive orders, he's becoming more like Hugo Chavez.
Like Hitler, like Stalin, like Mao.
Fidel Castro took the guns.
Germany,
It happened to the Germans.
French,
it happened in China. It happened in Uganda.
Spain,
I mean,
Japan.
it's
He's even using children. It reminds me of Saddam Hussein when he used kids.
Wow! It's like a game of $25,000 pyramid where the categories are either dictators or unflattering mustaches. Maybe we're not ready to have a specific conversation about what government can do about gun violence until we have a clearer understanding of how we all regard our relationship to the government.
Even though The Daily Show and other comedy news shows are not intended to be a legitimate news source, over half of young adults between the ages of 18 through 24 reported of getting at least some news about the 2004 presidential campaign from comedy programs such as The Daily Show and Saturday Night Live, making satirical news the most watched and reliable source of news according to many Americans, with positive and negative effects on the American media mindset. Research shows that the barrage of negative jokes simply entertains the audience of The Daily Show without consequence. Psychological research indicates that messages delivered with humor are more persuasive and memorable. By holding an increasing influence over political culture and public perceptions, satirical news redefines what should be classified as newsworthy, displaying how much of our society is displeased with news outlets that polarize Americans in a way that is either too left or too right. To many Americans, what is considered news is slanted towards the station's point of view. The presence of satirical news in our society and its popularity as being a primary news source for many Americans displays how society is drawn towards news that entertains.
So, Mr. King President, unless you and the anti-gun brigade will admit that we gun owners are constitutionally guaranteed the right to have any weapon we want, we will use every weapon we can get to keep every weapon we have. And that's the word. We'll be right back.
I just want to say, you're not going to get any pushback in this country on your point about not wanting tyranny or not liking tyranny. The question is a disagreement in just how close we are teetering on the edge of it, and whether or not you're confusing tyranny with the unpleasant burning sensation of losing democratic elections, which we just had. And by the way, if Obama were a tyrant, you think these are the numbers he puts up? Tyrants don't have to fight that hard for Ohio. And generally, forget about utterly tanking your first debate. Tyrants don't show up for those. The real debate for tyrants is how big you want to go with the sunglasses and epaulets. You know, I guess it can be best summed up by the old homily. First, they came for the guns, and I said nothing, because they really didn't. We'll be right back.
News is considered an extension of our society. We are encountered with news every day. It governs how we react to certain issues. Our attitudes and judgments on issues are established by the way the news is presented to us. Fake news maintains the approach that mainstream news outlets can be spun into satire that entertains viewers, while informing them on the issues occurring, having a strong impact on Americans and real news. That's all for today. Thanks for watching 49 News. I'm Ayana Gill.